to Staff Works Explained. If you are here for the first time, please subscribe to this channel. Also, watch other videos that you have done and leave a comment on your thoughts about some of these projects. In today's video, we'll be talking about Kabaale crude oil refinery, which is a project being planned in Uganda for purpose of refining oil for domestic and also for export. Ever since oil was discovered in Uganda in 2006, oil production has not been realized, and this delay is due to a combination of factors. Some of these factors include: we have contractual and tax disputes, where disagreement and disputes over contracts and taxation between the Ugandan government and the international investors has significantly delayed oil production. These disputes involve issues such as revenue sharing, royalty rates, and the terms of production sharing agreements. Differences on export versus local refining. This has been an issue. Deciding on the proportion of oil production to be exported versus refined locally has been a contentious issue. The government of Uganda and the international investors have had different views on how to balance their economic interests, and this has led to delay as negotiations continue. There is also export route on main export pipeline route disagreements. The choice of export pipeline route is critical for this type of a project. Selecting the optional or the optimal route has been a challenge, as it involves several considerations and interests of different stakeholders. Disagreement over the pipeline route prolonged the planning and approval process. Sustainable low global oil prices, where prices have had impact on the economy of oil production. Sustained low oil prices have made project less economically viable, leading to delays and the assessment of the project feasibility. Delays in oil production of is not something which is this is something which is common, especially in countries where these delays, there are complex regulatory, political, and economic factors at play. Resolving these issues and reaching consensus among stakeholders is crucial for the project to move forward. That said, progress has been made, although at a slower rate. There is the development of a central processing units. Drilling has already started. There is Fast Oil, which is expected in 2025. East African crude oil pipeline has made some stride despite some challenges. Then there is Kabaale refinery, which is just like ECOP is facing some issues. The Kabaale refinery is planned crude oil refinery in Kabaale village on the eastern shore of Lake Albert, along the Hoima Kaiso Tonya Road, Beseruka sub-county, Hoima district. This is in western region near the border with DRC. The refinery will have an input of capacity of 60,000 barrels per day and will produce a range of products including gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, propane, among others. The refinery is expected to be completed, or was expected to be completed in 2025, but these may not be realized given the recent development, especially when the expiry of the agreement with the consortium that is supposed to construct it came. The Kabaale refinery is a major infrastructure project for Uganda, and it is expected to have benefits for this country. These include increased energy security, economic growth, and also skills development. The refinery is a complex one, and there are a number of challenges that need to be addressed before it can be completed. One challenge is the financing of the project. The refinery is estimated to cost $4 billion, and it is not clear how this will be funded. Some significant progress has been made, especially with selection of the consortium that was supposed to lead the process. Albertine Graben Energy Consortium (AGRC) was awarded the contract for the Ugandan oil refinery through a competitive bidding process. In 2015, the government of Uganda invited companies to submit bids to build and operate the refinery. A consortium led by Russia, RT Global Resources, and South Korea, SK Engineering and Construction, was initially selected as the preferred bidder. However, the negotiations about the project framework agreement with the Russian-led investors failed, leading to a new bidding process. In 2018, Albertine Graben was selected as the preferred bidder for the refinery project. The consortium comprises of Yatara Africa, Lionworks Group, Nuovo Pignone International, and Saipeni SPA. Albertine Graben was selected based on the number of factors, including its technical expertise, financial strength, and also the proposed project plan. The government of Uganda has said that AGRC, that is Albertine Graben, was selected because it offered best value for money. The consortium's proposal included innovative features such as modular refinery design that would allow for phased construction and expansion. Albertine Graben also committed to using local content to develop Uganda's skills and capacity. The awarding of contract to Albertine Graben was a significant milestone for the Ugandan oil and gas sector. The refinery is expected to play a major role in the country's economic development. However, there has been challenges, especially when the project framework agreement expired. So this put the construction of the refinery at jeopardy. This process has been reported hit snag following the expiry of the project framework agreement between the government and the American Albertine Graben Energy Consortium. The project framework agreement was officially coming to an end or expiring June 30th, 2023, and this came without the conclusion of other agreement to make the much needed final investment decision. The five-year negotiations around the refinery had yielded tangible results. Had not yielded results despite waivers that were granted by the President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, and these were sweeteners to the investors, but it seems that this didn't work. Sources within the government say that it appeared that the project had hit a snag after the Albertine Graben failed to abide by the deadline as per the agreement. Negotiations have been since April 2018 when the project framework agreement was signed. Albertine Graben which was later to rebrand to Albertine Graben Energy Consortium (AGEC), failed to meet this deadline. According to the project framework agreement, the consortium was to develop 60,000 barrels of oil per day refinery in Hoima. According to the Minister of Energy, it was clear that they all believed that come June 30th, the consortium would make the final investment decision, but this did not happen. So negotiations were continuing, and they were spearheaded by the government through the Energy Ministry, together with the major player, Ugandan National Oil Company (UNOC). The two sides were supposed to conclude negotiations on the implementation agreement, shareholders agreement, and crude oil supply agreement. The failure to conclude these agreements and failure by the consortium to take the final investment decision raised question about how the refinery project was to be pushed forward. The other question was about the relationship between the government and the consortium with the expiry of the PFA. An official at the Ministry of Energy said that agreement had technically expired, and that would, I mean, they need to probably have an extension or get into fresh negotiations with another interested investor. At this time, it could not be confirmed whether the consortium would seek an extension or they would withdraw from the project altogether. Apart from the extension of the PFA, there is also a question of ownership of data regarding the front-end engineering design feed for the refinery project, which was undertaken by the consortium in 2021. The front-end engineering design for the refinery, which is to be located in Kabaale, Beseruka sub-county, Hoima district, was ready in July 2022, paving way for negotiations that had just stalled with the end of PFA. The consortium also had conducted and completed environmental, social, and impact assessment for the project. There were reports that President Museveni had waived the fees which were to be paid by the consortium as part of his effort to fast track the construction of the refinery so that it is operational when the Kingfisher oil operated by SNOC and Total Energies Tilenga projects begin pumping oil out of the ground. Kingfisher and Tilenga are already drilling part of their wells as they race towards the first oil in 2025. The refinery, with a capacity to process between 30 to 60,000 barrels per day of crude oil, was supposed to retain part of the crude of oil from the Albertine for locally consumed fuels. The rest will then be pumped through the East African crude oil pipeline project for export. By the end of 2022, some officials at the Ministry of Energy acknowledged that the refinery was unlikely to be completed by mid-July 2025. They said it would instead most likely be completed in 2027. It's still not clear whether this deadline or this date will be met. The award of the refinery to the consortium had initially caused excitement at the U.S. Embassy in Kampala. The then U.S. envoy Deborah Malak was even present when the signing of the agreement was being done. There are questions about why Americans do not seem enthusiastic as they were in 2018. In December 2022, President Museveni had indicated that the final investment decision for the refinery would be made by the East African Energy Security Transition Investment Project. At the time, the president was in U.S. summit at Tools sideline. He met the partners and the consortium partners, that is. So this is not the first time that the refinery is failing to take off. It had happened earlier in 2015 when the Russian-led investors failed to reach an agreement with the Ugandan government. This would be the second time that the refinery is failing to take off. In February 2015, the government selected a consortium of Russia, RT Global, and the South Korea SK Engineering Construction Company failed to reach an agreement and to build the refinery. The negotiations about the PFA with the Russian-led investors failed, leading to new bidding process being called, and that's when this consortium of Albertine Graben was selected as preferred bidder. So the refinery project is still critical component for the Ugandan oil and gas development strategy. The refinery will help reduce Ugandan dependence on imported petroleum products and will also generate revenue for the government. However, the project has been plagued by delays and challenges. One of the main challenges is the lack of experience in Uganda in managing large oil and gas sector. The government is still in the process of developing the necessary laws and regulations, and it's also trying to build capacity within its institutions. Another challenge is complexity of the project. The refinery is large and complex, and it requires significant investment of capital and technology. The government has been struggling to attract investors, and the ongoing negotiations with the consortium have been difficult. Despite these challenges, we believe that the refinery project is still viable. Uganda has significant oil and gas reserves, as the refinery will help create jobs and generate revenue for the country. However, it is important for the government to learn from the past and take steps to address the challenges that are facing the project. Here are some of the specific things that the government can do to move the project forward. It can create a stable and predictable investment environment, where the government needs to ensure that there are clear and transparent regulatory framework for the oil and gas sector. This will help attract investors and reduce risk of disputes. It also needs to strengthen the capacity of its institutions, where the government needs to invest in training and development for its employees, and it needs to ensure that its institutions have the resources that are needed to effectively manage the oil and gas sector. It can also work with the private sector to develop the project, where the government should partner with private investors to develop the refinery. This would help to share the risk and to bring the necessary expertise and technology. So what options is government following? There are reports that government is now seeking for new investors for its refinery after its project framework agreement with the consortium expired in June 30, 2023. While the Minister of Energy acknowledges that the consortium had made significant development, it notes that the company had failed to mobilize critical financing, for which now the government is seeking new capital. The ministry said that although there are outstanding aspects, including mobilization of financing for the project, the government of Uganda was open to receiving offers from public sector capital providers to participate in these nationally and regional strategic projects. The Energy Permanent Secretary said that still the consortium had an opportunity to be a major player in this refinery, so it means that they have not ruled out participation of Albertine Graben in this project. The government did not extend the PFA or sign an implementation project agreement with the consortium after its tenure expired without taking a final investment decision, which it had promised when it signed the PFA in 2018. The refinery is to be financed through the debt equity ratio of 70-30, with the task of raising much of the capital falling on the private developer. There are reports that in March this year, Uganda signed wide-ranging memorandum of understanding with Algeria government-owned energy firm Sonatrach Petroleum Corporation on midstream, downstream development of Uganda's oil sector, which includes the refinery. Sources indicate that the government was growing jittery at the time over the lack of progress with the consortium, which, according to the government, the MOU with Algeria's Sonatrach was because the government had to look for its own interest. The official said that it was just a few weeks before the end of June, and from the perspective, it didn't look like the consortium was to take FID before the expiry of the deadline. Then there is EAC option. There is an option available to mobilize East African Community Partner States to commit to taking up equity, while capital investment for the public-owned agencies has also been mooted. The refinery shareholding structure was 60% owned by the private developer, that is the consortium, while Uganda holds 40%, which is to be floated amongst its EAC partner states. 10 years ago, that was in 2013, Uganda had invited 4 East African Community Partner States to buy stakes in the proposed refinery. 40% shareholding was to reserve for the public sector. All the East African members had to confirm their participation in this project. The multi-billion-dollar refinery will be developed on a public-private partnership basis, where the public owns 40% of the shares, while the private sector owns 60%. Then Kenya was the only country in EAC bloc that had a refinery, although it was facing several problems owing to its aging condition. The refinery had since been turned into an oil and gas storage facility. So East Africa currently does not have an oil refinery. So building of this refinery in Uganda is crucial. A team leader of the Ugandan oil refinery project had said that the public shares were to be offered to the EAC partner states Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi. They were extending the invitation to the public to own stake, where they were to have 10% share in the refinery. The 40% government share was to be available to these countries in East Africa, and it was seen as a significant opportunity for the region. This shareholder could provide these countries with benefits, including ownership and control of a strategic asset. The oil refinery, as we know, is a critical piece of infrastructure for these countries. It was to play a major role in regional economic development and energy security. By owning a share of the refinery, these countries would have had a great say in its operation. Then there is revenue generation, where some revenue was expected out of this project. This country would have benefited, and they would be been able to fund priorities such as education, health, and infrastructure. Then there is job creation, where the project was expected to create thousands of jobs, directly and indirectly, and this was to boost economic development or growth in these countries. Then there is skills development, where oil refinery would require skilled workforce. This would provide opportunities for these for citizens in this country, and they have a chance to develop their skills and knowledge. Then there was a technology transfer, where the oil refinery was to introduce new technologies to these countries, and this was to help modernize the region's economy and make it more competitive. As at August, only Kenya and Tanzania had committed to taking up stake in this refinery. Kenya had committed 2.5%, while Tanzania had committed 8%. The other East African countries were yet to commit on the shares that they were to take, and the Uganda government is still continuing with the talks with these countries, and it's only a matter of time to know which countries are in and which countries are out. It's clear, or it is not clear, what the next step will be for the refinery project. The consortium has not yet shown any indication whether it will seek an extension of the PFA or whether it will walk away from the project altogether. The government has not yet made any public statements about its plan. Some analysts have speculated that the government may try to renegotiate the PFA with the consortium, or it might start fresh negotiations with a new investor. Others have suggested that the government may abandon the refinery project altogether. It is important to note that the refinery project is still technically viable. Uganda has significant oil and gas reserves, and there is a strong demand for refined petroleum products in the region. However, the project is complex and expensive, and it will require significant investment of capital and technology. The future of the refinery project will depend on various factors, which include willingness of the consortium or a new investor to commit to the project, and the government's ability to create stable and predictable investment environment. It's unclear who the final partners in Kabaale refinery project will be. However, the government has stated that it's committed to moving the project forward as soon as possible. So thank you for reaching this far. If you are here for the first time, please subscribe to this channel, watch other videos that you have done on this channel, and leave a comment. If you are a repeat viewer, we thank you for the support that you have accorded us throughout the period. Thank you.